whole time she was there.
So did you have powwows when you were a kid?
No, we had camp meetings.
Camp meetings?
Right below the farm. There's a road there. I've taken it there. We weren't supposed to go because we were Catholic. That was a Methodist camp meeting. But we used to go because you could buy root beer for a nickel. And we used to get in there kids' plays. And we had to wear little buckskin pullovers that they'd always tie a headband
So
on
you had to
you
wear
with
a
a
gold
feather.
costume?
Huh?
You had to go in native dress?
Well, like if they had a night open to the public and we had to get up there and sing or recite something.
So you were on display?
So we were on display. It was mixed boys and girls. There was a lot of kids our age.
Is that where the picture of you is from that we have?
The newspaper took a picture of me, the only blonde Indian, standing like this. That means how. That's a greeting.
With your white shoes?
With my white high top shoes. And it made the front page of the Sentinel right in the middle of the top.
Where did we find that? About what year or two ago we found that picture? It was in a calendar or something, wasn't it?
No, when we were at Aunt Cosey's. That calendar was in that back room in a drawer.
Okay.
And I'm in that calendar, and so are they.
You still have that?
Yeah, I was going to show it to you the other night when we were talking.
Because that's the first I've seen that picture of her mom sitting there.
Well, Kevin gave that to us last year. We
Okay.
found that last year when we came up here. And then that one where she's, that little girl in the picture, we took a picture and I put it on
Yeah.
Facebook, but it's from that calendar, and we just came across that at her house. Not this past winter, but the winter before.
Well, I knew I had it because I saved some of her stuff.
Right.
And I went through that, and there's a picture of all the kids that are like at Cozy and at Lois's age. Mixture. Was that mixture or all women?
It was, I think, a mixture, because we tried to name as many as we could on there.
And they're all in costume. And Aunt Lois would never take a picture. She's looking down like this when they took a picture.
Even when she was little.
Oh, she was a teenager there.
Well, but still,
Yeah. She'd never take a stand for a picture. Always walk away. They all had to get there, and somebody had braids. Either her or Aunt Cozy had braids. But it's a lot of them are our relatives, Barbados and Millers, and they're all like first cousins. They were my mother's sister's kids. Barbados, Mary and Barbados lived across the road, that old house by Aunt Lois's. They lived there, and my mother and her got along good. But she was a diabetic, and you know how their blood sugar goes low and they get mean? I used to be so afraid of her because she must have had that often. And back then they didn't treat diabetes. And she would just get these, after she'd eat, she'd be okay. But she would just be like a devil. Kids used to run. But that, now I understand why she was like that.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, down below us, was Miller's, and that was my mother's half-sister. And they never got along. The mother that had them didn't like my mother. I was telling you the other day, or was I telling you? Like when she was in 7th, 8th, or 8th grade, they sent her off to school at Mount Pleasant.
Aunt Lois?
Huh?
You're talking about Aunt Lois they sent off?
No, they sent my mother
Oh, your mother.
off to Mount Pleasant because the mom didn't like her, but which probably was to her advantage to get away from that kind of a home life. And she stayed there for a few years, but I said back then they didn't teach you reading, writing, arithmetic. They taught you cooking, embroidering, sewing, how to be a housewife.
So she went downstate for a while and then
Mount Pleasant,
but
yeah.
came back.
But she came back home. Well, I mean, that she had to go back to her home.
Okay.
And then
So
she
it was
married.
just a boarding school type thing.
Yeah, it was a boarding school. And that, I don't know if that's where she met the Stoddard. He was from Odena. And she married him, and they lived where Aunt Lois lives, though.
Okay.
That was her home with Stoddard. Well, then when Stoddard dropped dead, like he was 23, I think the age was, dropped dead down on a little road playing baseball. And she had Uncle Jack and Aunt Lois. And then she
Okay.
married my dad, and then had 5 more kids with him.
Wasn't there 3 husbands though?
Yeah, Frank Bedell. She never talked about him.
Did he come? Was he the first husband then, or
He was the second.
second?
Yeah.
Okay. But no
But
kids.
I guess
by
he
him.
was real mean. That's the only thing I remember her ever talking about.
Okay.
He beat her.
Okay.
So that she's divorced my dad, I guess, or divorced him and married my dad. And then when Aunt Lois got married, he felt that that home was hers, because that was put there by her dad. So we moved on the farm just up the road in the rock.
Oh,
It was
okay.
called Lano's Farm. So we moved up there. Had more kids than that little house, only had 3 bedrooms, I think.
Well, how big? What was your house like?
It was a big farmhouse, 2-story. It had a long porch. It had a sun porch, probably this width. And it had a great big farm kitchen, a pantry off of there. And then behind that big kitchen was our living room. And then there was 2 bedrooms off of that living room. And we had one of my mom and dad here, and then the boys, the older kids stayed upstairs.
Okay.
Uncle Kelly stayed right at the top of the steps, and I remember he used to pay me to dust his floor because he used to. There were wooden floors back then, so he'd give me $0.25 to dust his floor. And one time my mom chased me up the steps. He had a small bedroom, and then behind that bedroom was a bigger bedroom, and I think that's where Aunt Cozy slept. And then Jack Stoddard had the front of the house. He had a great big, because he was going to Michigan Tech. So they felt he needed a room to study in. But he stayed in Houghton, but when he'd come home on weekends, he studied all weekend.
Okay.
So he had a great big bedroom in the front with a desk, and there was a little closet off of it. Well, one time, I must have been fighting with that Joe, and my mother was a heavy woman, and I ran upstairs thinking she would chase me. She chased me. Oh, there's no place to go. So I flew under the bed. And by the time she got to that bed, it wasn't Uncle Kelly's bed, it was Aunt Cozy's. And back then you didn't have box springs, you had springs. So I flew under that bed. By the time she got there, she was laughing so hard. She just flopped on the bed and she almost killed me. She came right down in the middle and the springs would go like this. My poor mother. Chased her up the road one time with a dead snake. I snapped its head. It's one of those big green snakes. And she could hardly run. Look, Mom, look what I got. I'm telling your dad when he gets home. I chased her almost halfway up to the top of the road before I let her come back.
Did you say it
home.
was like between the barn and the house or something? You said
Yeah.
it was the pathway or something?
Oh, no, that was where
That was another time.
that was an old lady that used to come for a camp meeting. That was Aunt Ellen. She used to come from Brimley. She'd hitchhike. Little tiny woman. Just her skin was like leather. She walked wherever she went. They used to call them turkeys. They were little bags that you tied with 4 on top, and you put it on the back of a stick. That's how she traveled. All her clothes were in there or on her. And she came for a camp meeting, and she stayed with us all the time. She was a relative to, I don't know if it was my mom or dad. She was all I know of her was Aunt Ellen. I don't know her last name. So she'd come for, and I did this to scare my mom. I took one of those dead snakes. They were all over the farm. And I curled it up like this, like you see them in pictures. Aunt Ellen was coming from the outhouse. Pissed her pants right in front of the snake. Oh, got help for that one too.
Was Aunt Joan afraid of snakes?
Probably. She was afraid of everything.
I was going to say, I don't remember her ever having stories like that.
Uh-uh.
And then what happened to your house? Because now your house was...
It burnt down when I was in nursing school.
Okay. So your dad was living there at the time?
My dad was living there. He was alone. When I graduated, we lived there for a year when my mom died in September. And Joan stayed there, and then they must have made arrangements with that Cozy to raise her. Because when I was going to leave for school, she left right in June. They drove here from California. They were living in Riverside, California then. And they picked up Aunt Joan. That just tore my heart out. She said to this, well, she always said, to this day, Marilyn, I can see you chasing the car just like a dog. I was crying my eyes out. So she left, so I was leaving in like the end of August for nursing school, and then my dad was there home alone, and I don't remember when the house burned. I know I came home for Thanksgiving, it was still there, but we used wood to burn, so he probably made a good fire before he went off to work. Burned right to the ground, right down to the cement blocks.
And that's where Uncle Kelly ended up living, right? I mean,
yeah, well, then they put a house. There was a little house on the. There was a lot of. Well, there was a big barn. I don't know if that's still standing.
I think it used to be. I don't know if it's still in.
Used to be a big barn. There was a big machine shed right across. I mean, it would have held 4 tractors or a big garage in the back of the farm. And then there was a sauna, and the sauna was big. And that's where they moved into when they got back here. Then they put up a house where, you know, where they lived.
Mm-hmm.
I think they didn't put it where the farm was. I think they buried that up. Because it faced the road. Our farm faced the fields.
Okay. Well, that picture of that sauna, that was on Facebook this year too, and you said that's where Uncle Kelly and them, they started living there.
Yeah. He quit the state police and came back home.
Wow.
Brought in Carolyn with him. Dan. Kevin was born in Lansing while they were down there. Kevin was born while I was in nursing school.
Yeah, because did Uncle Kelly come see you?
Yeah, he came by and thought nobody ever had a baby before. You should see him on it. His head's round, just perfectly round. And he did remind me of Charlie Brown back then. He always got that big head. And then he went to get my dad to take him down to see him. Uncle Kelly and Aunt Carolyn, when they first were married, used to come up and get me, because he worked weekends too, so on his weekend off, a lot of times, they'd come and either spend Saturday or Sunday. They'd come in the morning, pick me up, take us just riding. He left to ride, just go exploring. I used to take this roommate, Gloria Winters, she was from Detroit, she was black, with us, and she just thought Uncle Kelly was wonderful. You know how crazy he could be. And we went to Lake City. He was taking us there for dinner before they went back. You know where Lake City is?
No.
No. You were further down, I guess. Anyway, it's like a resort town.
Okay.
Probably skiing town. I don't know. But anyway, we went in a restaurant there, and they came over and gave us menus. And gave us 3 menus that we could serve you, but we can't serve you. Pointing at the black girl. So we got up and left. Oh, when we got back to the nurse's home that night, she goes, Marilyn, I'm never going to go with you again. I said, why? I thought something happened. She said, I ruined your day today, or something like that to me. And I said, you did not. You know, and I know what she was talking about, but we had no prejudice.
Right.
And I said, no, you didn't. You know,